If you thought that losing your job after 50 was bad enough, losing your health insurance, well, that takes it to a whole different level. And I can talk to this, and because I'm from the UK originally, and I've seen different healthcare systems at work. But do you realize that if you're a married couple, you could be paying possibly up to $24,000 a year in health insurance? That's on COBRA. If you have dependents, that figure is going to go up even further. Now, how do I get to that number? Well, I can only base it on my own situation, and I'm paying nearly $1,200 a month just for myself. So that's over, what, $13,000, $14,000 a year for one person. What if you don't have health insurance? And particularly if you own a house, you have assets, anything like that. Simple road accident, anything like that could absolutely destroy you. But here's the thing, it's not anything as severe as an accident. What about medication, the cost of medication? I am on one drug which cost me $25 on copay. If I were to buy that myself, it would cost over $1,000 a month. I mean, it's crazy. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago now, actually, a good few years ago, maybe, 14, 15 years ago, maybe more. I was having dinner with my partner and some family members, and I was getting like pains in my chest. And they were all telling me to go to hospital. And I'm like, I'm fine. And I felt like I was fine. And being a typical stubborn guy, I did nothing about it. But I did agree that first thing in the morning, I would call my doctor's office. So, of course, I called the doctor's office. And as soon as I mentioned chest pains, they were like, nope, we don't want to see you. You've got to go to hospital. Like now. So, we were heading into Manhattan, and my partner dropped me off at the hospital. And I said, okay, because I felt fine. I'll see you in a few hours. I went into the hospital, and I went to the counter, and they said, how can we help you? I mentioned chest pains, and it was like bam, bam, bam. Before I knew it, I was on a gurney being taken in, or being admitted. And they hooked me up, took my blood, and they were taking blood for every 4 hours, I think it was. And to cut a long story short, I was in hospital for 2 nights. 2 nights. No surgery, blood tests, a bed, breakfast, dinner, and a stress test. And after 2 nights, I was told I could go home. It must have been some kind of indigestion or something along those lines. Certainly was not a heart attack, which was my suspicion all along. A few weeks later, I get a bill. $20,000. $20,000. No surgery, no real tests other than blood work and a stress test, which was basically me running on a treadmill. $20,000. Now, fortunately, I had health insurance, so I only had to pay $2,000, 10%. But what if you didn't have health insurance? What if you did require surgery? What if you were in hospital for a week or longer? If you can't pay the bill, they're coming after you. Your home, your assets, everything. This is the American dream, by the way. Now, in comparison, last year I was in the UK and I wasn't well. And I hadn't been well for a week or two. Again, I was kind of ignoring it, but it got to a point where I couldn't ignore it any longer. And I went to hospital in the UK. And I was in for 2 nights. And they found the problem, they sorted it out, and they gave me medication. Everything's fine. No bill. Now, I'm not saying that the NHS is a perfect operation. That's the healthcare system in the UK, because it's not. It's got a lot of problems. And to the point that I didn't even have a bed in the hospital. I had to sleep in a chair. And there was a 36-hour wait for a bed. But that's not the NHS fault. That's the government and the funding. But we're not going there. And Canada has a similar healthcare system. Now, I don't know as much about the Canadian healthcare system, but I know that there is one. In the US in particular, you could lose everything. And you have to take in consideration after you've lost your job, not only are you not having an income, you could have potentially 24,000 or more in health insurance costs, because the alternative really isn't an alternative. Now, there are other healthcare options out there. So I'm particularly referring to COBRA. But of course, the other thing with healthcare plans in general, not all the plans are the same, right? You know, different plans cover for different things, and the amount they cover for different amounts. But the lack of a social healthcare system within the US makes it dangerous for you to be without some form of health insurance. And if that wasn't enough by itself, this should be a sobering figure, and I've mentioned it in videos before. And that is 24%, that's 1 out of 4 roughly, of people over 50 who are let go from their job never work again. Let that sink in for a minute. And if you take in the whole picture, losing a salary, cost of healthcare versus the cost of not having healthcare, it's a frightening prospect, to be honest with you. That's why I mentioned on Saturday's video, one of my thoughts was about moving to East Asia, like the Philippines, because you can get cheap expat health insurance in the Philippines, but in addition to that, healthcare generally is cheaper in the Philippines, and the standard of healthcare is relatively good. So I guess what I'm trying to say is losing your job after 50 by itself is bad. But the health insurance side is terrifying, really terrifying. I just want to tell you that I do a podcast now, and it goes out the following day after the YouTube video, so it'll be a Tuesday and a Friday, and I go into more detail in the podcast. So I'll include a link below for the podcast page, and please follow the podcast so you get notified when a new podcast comes out. And also, I just created a message board on the empowerover50.com website, and you just sign up, it's free. You get a verification code, enter the code, and you're in. And it's a place for people to share their experiences, both good and bad. And we're trying to build a community here. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Cheers.